Hello. This message is for Mother's Day weekend 2023. And so I want to begin by saying Happy Mother's Day, mothers. Those of you who are biological mothers, those of you who have been mothering people in so many different ways of psychological and physical support for other people. And you're just, it's wonderful. Thank you for what you do. I'm glad you have some time to be celebrated in good fashion. Today, I want to begin by talking about the difference between average and normal. Average, whether it's on math, we're taking a number and figuring the average, or whether it's behavior of people. Average means you kind of take all of it, from the lows and the highs, you kind of add it all together and divide by the number involved, and 50% are above average and 50% are below average. It's just the way you figure out that number, that position. Normal refers to the norm, what things should be. Sometimes the average can be above the norm. Other times the average is well below what the norm should be for a given situation. For example, the norm would be that a high school graduate would be able to read and write. But that is not necessarily true in all of Chicago public schools or in that of many other large city schools around our country. Kids graduate and they can't read or write yet, and that's a very sad situation. So we have other places where people are well above that in their abilities, and I just want to make sure it's clear we understand what average is and norm before we get into Jesus here today. For example, I remember being in an algebra class in ninth grade, and we were supposed to do well. This was kind of an advanced class, and we were expected to be scoring at least 80% on all our tests. Well, on this one test, the fact was that Miss Flake handed out the test, and everybody in the class except one flunked the test. I happened to be the one who got an A+. But she looked at that test and decided that we're just going to throw the whole thing out. Because if the whole class had done that poorly, she wanted to take the blame on herself, that she was the one who didn't do the job right that time. So they all got a chance to restudy that chapter and take the test again. Nobody made it to where they were supposed to on the average. They were well below the norm. Now, normal in a family would be a case where you have a mother and a father and the children all living happily and lovingly together. And that's the norm. And that was the average as well back in the 50s when I was growing up. Sadly, that is not the case anymore. It's not what God had intended families to be. The average is far from that. Now, mothers are supposed to be the superstars in the family, trying to keep things going, juggling all kinds of things at once, and this has always been true. The mothers are there. Fathers might be the disciplinarian. They're out hunting or doing whatever other kind of work they need to do throughout the ages. And meanwhile, back at home, the mother is holding things together, and she's going to have to be that superstar, working 18 hours a day, multitasking, not complaining. Many have to also have a job outside the home as well as taking care of all the jobs inside the home. Women, you're heroines of the happy home. You're sustainers of the normal. Mothers, I commend you. I salute you. In today's passage, we're going to see the disciples getting to know Jesus a little better. They knew he was not the average man. They had even believed already that he was Messiah and eagerly were following him. Yet they did not fully understand yet exactly who he was and how great he is. Now get this also. The disciples could not have then guessed that Jesus was and is the norm for what God planned for you and I to be. Jesus is the norm for living by the Holy Spirit. All of us who have the Holy Spirit have the Spirit of the living God in us, as Jesus did too. And so he was then showing us what would be the expected life we would have, the norm of what we as Christians should be. Not just a target, but the norm. And so we need to be ready to up our game, and starting with understanding better who Jesus himself is. Today in these two stories, we're looking at Jesus the Storm Stiller. That's my title, Jesus the Storm Stiller. And like many moms who have to calm the storms of all kinds of things coming with their children, well, we see Jesus here calming storms in Mark chapter 4 and in Mark chapter 5. So I'll begin by reading it at the beginning of Mark chapter 4. Again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. The crowd had gathered around him, and it was so large he had to get in a boat and sit in it out on the lake while all the people were along the shore at the water's edge. He taught them many things in parables, and in his teaching he said, and we got a number of parables. I'm not going to read all these. He taught them many things, like the farmer went out to sow his seed, and some falls on the path, and some on the good soil, some on the bad soil. You'll remember that passage. And another parable where we got the kingdom of God is like a man who scatters a seed. Some things happen. How does it happen? The farmer doesn't know. He just puts it out there and it grows. Another parable about the mustard seed. It's so tiny, and yet it can grow into this large tree-like plant to produce more beyond. And here we are seeing that Jesus is painting pictures in our minds and hearts about how the Spirit is going to be working in us. And so he's using these parables, and it mentions here, chapter 4, verse 34, he did not say anything to them without using a parable. But when he's alone, he explains them in depth to his disciples. After he's done with this, we run into storm number 1. He had so many people crowding him, he was in the boat to start with. When he's done teaching, he says, hey fellas, let's just head on out. So they pull off to the middle of the lake, and then they're going to be making a turn. I'm in verse 35 of Mark chapter 4. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. All right, and picture this. There's boats where Jesus is teaching, some people standing along the shore, others on boats nearby, kind of like fireworks at a lake somewhere where all kinds of boats want to be there. But once they go farther away from shore and the squall starts, a lot of people say head for shore. But the disciples are already in the midst of it, and so they're the only boat out there during this time. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Okay, this is professional sailors as well as some others. This storm is bad. And meanwhile, Jesus is sleeping back there. He was wore out from his teaching time, but maybe you want to wake up because we're about to die. It's like you want to know. And so Jesus wakes up. He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, Quiet, be still. Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. Now, you might want to try to explain this by the idea that, oh, well, the wind can start and stop whenever it will. But waves don't do that. There's going to be rippling in here for some time after the wind stops. But no, not on this occasion. He says, quiet, be still, and the wind stops suddenly, and the waves calm. It's completely calm, Mark says in verse 39. He said to his disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? They were terrified and asked each other, Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. They were afraid and terrified from the storm. Now they find out there's another power at hand, greater than the storm. Jesus had previously healed people who were sick. He had done miracles for them before. But now this is a matter of nature. He is Lord of nature. He can command the wind and the waves. And so they're now really terrified because there's a greater power than Mother Nature here. Who is this? We didn't rate him high enough, did we? Jesus the storm stiller. They didn't rate him high enough. And I wonder sometimes if you and I do as well. They've called him teacher. They've called him master. Chapter 9, we'll see him call him rabbi. A lot of different terms they use for Jesus. He was their teacher and their rabbi and their master. Yet there's still more. They discover here in this story, the storm here, where Jesus is the storm stiller. They say, whoa, he's more than that. we immediately get to the other side here in chapter 5, starting in verse 1. They went across the lake, and this is on the east side of the lake there, Sea of Galilee, and they're over on the east side in the area of the Gerasenes. This is not Jewish, this is the Gentile area. Jesus got out of the boat. A man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs. No one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. So as Jesus is getting out of the boat, he's heading up the path that goes to the top there, the Golan Heights, and this man is coming down the path towards him, running at him, and he's dressed a little funny. He's probably pretty much naked except for chains and ropes dangling from his ankles and his wrists. The townspeople during the calmer times could take him on as a group and try to tie him up and haul him out of the city, saying, "Get out of here." And he had no friends, nowhere to go. He lived out in the tombs area there out in the country, so it was a tough life. Night and day among the tombs in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Now, I don't know if that's because the demons were having pleasure, this guy just kind of hurting himself, or if the man was trying to kill himself to end all this torture that all these indwelling spirits would have had in him. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." So, and this is the man's voice coming out at this time, but it isn't the man speaking. He might have been running down the hill hoping to find some hope, but he might not have known who Jesus was. The demons inside knew exactly who he was. The master of the universe had come, and here Jesus is walking towards them. Meanwhile, they're in this man, driving him down there, and so he's shouting at the top of his voice. Even when he's kneeling there in front of Jesus, and out of the mouth of here, we hear this. "Oh, what do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" Why? And we get the answer in the next question. Why is he saying that Jesus had been tormenting him? And so the answer, for Jesus had said to him, verse 8, Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." As Jesus is walking up the hill, he recognizes this man filled with demons coming on down. Well, filled with an evil spirit, I should say. And so Jesus says, "Come out of him, you unclean spirit." And there's a screech, and then the man still seems to be possessed. And Jesus is repeating this, "Come out of him, you unclean spirit." And so there's a torment here, because Jesus at the time apparently did not know that there were many spirits in here, many demons in him, and when he says, "Come out of him, you spirit," one of them has to go, and so that one's being tormented. The rest are saying, "Oh no, I might be next. Who's going to be next here?" And so Jesus asked him. This is something Jesus never had a problem expelling a spirit for someone before. He can do an exorcism better than the best, and so he's telling the evil spirit, "Come on out." But in this case, Jesus is perplexed. Wait a minute. I said spirit, come out, and it seems like it's still there. So he says, looking at the man, but he's going to speak to the spirits. Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And the response from inside is, "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." Legion is a Roman term for their army. It would normally be a full-strength legion would have 6,000 men in it. So we're not sure just how many this is, but there are many here. This man is possessed by more evil spirits than any of us could possibly have guessed. No wonder he was so strong. No wonder he had such a hard time socializing with anybody else. So after Jesus has called out at least one, several perhaps, we find in verse 10, and he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. So the demons inside know that their number's up. They got to leave this guy. Jesus is going to make them go. And they're thinking, we're living here in the Decapolis area on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. Don't send us out of the area. But if you catch that, then they realize it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 against one or 6,000 against one. The Lord is there, and he can send them anywhere he wants to. He could have said, get out of this region, never come back to the Decapolis again. Don't, not in the area of the Gerasenes. But they said, oh, don't do that. They like it there. They want to stay there. And Jesus realizes that there is a work that can go on here that could touch other lives too. And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. So up at the top, we got our pig herd that would be the herd for the whole area around there. The demons begged, send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them. Evil spirits wanting to go into unclean animals. Well, that'd be all right, Jesus, right? Jews can't eat pigs anyway. They're unclean animals. How about if we go into the unclean? We're unclean. They're unclean. It'll be okay, right? Please? And so Jesus gave them permission, verse 13, and the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed on the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. So if we just picture this here, say there's 4,000 demons in this man and 2,000 pigs. Each pig had 2 demons in them, and the one was saying go this way, one's going that way, and the poor pig brain is just going irrational, insane, and doesn't know what to do. So the whole herd just storms right off and into the lake. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside. The people went out to see what had happened. The bacon's gone, fellas. You want to come out and look at this. By the time the pig herders had left the scene from the pigs all killing themselves and had run off to spread the word, something else had happened back at the scene with the man, now himself again. So when the pig herders come back and they see the pigs are all gone, or maybe they're all floating in the lake still, I don't know, the people come, and we see this in verse 15. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Now, apparently some of the disciples donated some clothes. I'm not sure where the clothes came from, but this man who had ropes and chains around him now is sitting normally, calm. He's in his right mind for the first time in who knows how long, and he's better. You think they'd all be, hooray, hey, our friend here is now whole again. He's back to the old man. That's not how they react. Before, they said they had to do something because of this evil spirit in him, evil spirits, and they were afraid of him and had to gang tackle him to get him out of town. Now the situation's a bit different because another power had come into their area, greater than an army of demons, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened, and the demon-possessed man had told about the pigs as well. Verse 17, then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. They don't want this power around here. They wouldn't know what to do with him. He's obviously more powerful than them. Please, could you leave us alone? The sad part is, he left. They begged him to leave, and he left. He's willing to leave people to themselves if that's what they want. People shouldn't have to be in that situation. They ought to be able to have some superstar come along and calm the storms in their lives. But here's the storm stiller. Whether it's a physical nature storm, like they had out in the boat there in the lake with the squall, or whether it's a storm of evil spirits in somebody's life and you're just messed up inside, either way, Jesus is the storm stiller. And here he is there, and they could have him amongst them, but they beg him instead to leave. People who want God to leave them alone are going to be sorry they get their wish. He left. Verse 18, as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus did not let him. He said, go to your home and your family. Tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. No, don't come with me. You start at home and you tell people how the Lord has changed your life. All right? He has stilled your storm. Pass the news on because somebody else might want to come and be blessed in the same way. Go back home to your family. Tell them what the Lord has done for you. So the man went and began to tell in the Decapolis, that means the 10 cities, Decapolis, in that area there to the east side of the lake, how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. They probably knew this guy, at least by word of mouth, that this guy was just bad news. And when the demons are really strong in him, it was a terror. And now he's perfectly normal. As a matter of fact, he's beyond the average. Now he's reaching out to the norm of what God wanted for somebody to live in their life. And so at this time they're excited. They listen to this man. How sad it is that others wanted him to leave. I'm not sure what the storms are in your life. We have so many things that are happening these days, circumstances in life, whatever. It might be a storm of disease in your life. It might be a storm of some kind of deformity, some storm of fear that comes to you. Some might be afflicted by demons or whatever it might be. But we've already seen Jesus prove himself in so many different ways. He can calm and still the terrifying storm of nature. He can control the storm of demonic power. He's Lord of all. And so the storm stiller from chapters 4 and 5 of Mark can be the storm stiller in your life. I hope that most all of you would have had a mother who was a storm stiller of those things in your life when you were a child, doing the best she could to do that. Well, now you've got Jesus to do it for the rest of your life, handling all your storms. He can still them. Don't live in the storm if you don't want to, because the storm stiller has come. God bless you at bringing it up to him and letting him calm the storms in your life. God bless you.